I've said this many times before, and I continue to say it. When you experience suffering, distress, struggle, a crisis, it is always a good sign, or at least most of the time, it is a good sign. More often than not, it is a good sign that you are about to break through, that this phase you've been experiencing is about to come to an end. Although the whole phase might be dark, although you might have experienced a prolonged dark experience, when the suffering gets intense, when the feeling down is no longer tolerable, it is a good sign that this phase is coming to an end. No matter what perspective you use to analyze it, to look at it, to contemplate it, no matter which way you choose to understand, to perceive this whole situation about suffering, you're going to arrive to the same conclusion. This is not to say that spirituality or spiritual awakening or shifting or breaking through is all about suffering. But when it happens, it is that sign. In fact, it's quite the opposite. In fact, the best reason, the best analysis, the best explanation to show you that suffering is the end of the dark phase is that you're not here to suffer, is that you're not alive to suffer, is that living is not all about suffering, and that you cannot continue to suffer for that much longer once you start experiencing that intensity of suffering, that intensity of a crisis, the peak of suffering, the peak of a crisis you've been experiencing or going through. It cannot linger for that much longer. But if that's not proof enough to you that we're simply not here to suffer, and for that reason you cannot keep on suffering for that much longer, and for that reason suffering must indicate something, suffering must indicate the end of the road, suffering must be there for a specific reason. And what better reason could it be there for than its end? When it no longer holds meaning in your life, when it no longer has any control over you, it gets more and more intense until it drains all of that energy from within you, until you clear out all your karma, all your karmic cycles from the energy of suffering. Because think about this, and I will mention all of the different perspectives briefly, just to show you that it's not there to linger, that suffering is there to end the darkness. But when you are about to shift into a new reality, when you are about to shift into a new you, when you're shifting into a higher version of yourself, and you're raising that frequency, you're raising that vibration, you need to clear out whatever remains of that karma. Whether you still have karma to do with fear, to do with stress, to do with despite, to do with humiliation, to do with embarrassment, you've got to feel it. You've got to allow yourself to feel it before you shift, before you break through. And we all know, I know it very clearly, but we all know that you cannot have a spiritual awakening without experiencing a dark night of the soul. And that's true in most cases, and that's true most of the time. But there is a way to kind of avoid or skip that dark night of the soul. There is a way to at least hasten that dark night of the soul and move through it so fluently and so easily that you don't really feel it that badly. But that's a whole different video, and I think I'm gonna make a whole video about this. But the reason suffering is there is to clear out your system. Now think about this. If everything is energy, and once an energy becomes so condensed, so dense, and it's so collective, meaning that many people are experiencing it, are praising it even in a sense, are feeding it in simpler terms, it turns into a spirit. It could be a dark spirit, it could be a light spirit, it could be a demon, it could be the devil, it could be an angel, it could be a god. You know, regardless of how you choose to look at it, it could be simply pure conscious energy, pure form of energy, of that type of energy, purely of that energy, purely from that energy. Is it fear? The pure energy of fear. When it becomes so condensed and it's collective, it's being fed over and over. Now it is conscious, pure form of that energy. The more you experience it, the more it's fed, and the more it has control over you. Simultaneously, the more you deprive it, the more it wants you back. So let's explore one of those perspectives. They always say it's always darkest before dawn, although that's not, scientifically true. It's not darkest right before dawn, it's darkest a little bit before that, but the proverb is there for a reason, because when it gets to its darkest point, it means it has to break through. It has to come to a breaking point, and that suffering is coming to that breaking point if you allow it to, if you do not prolong it, if you do not resist it, if you do not reject it. And I will tell you exactly what you're doing that prolongs it, that rejects it, that resists it, and keeps you experiencing the same cycles over and over again. Now it's always darkest before dawn. So if you want to think about it from theology, from a theological point of view, from religion, when you are getting closer and closer to God, right when you're about to shift into God frequency, into becoming all about God, the devil gets your attention, or the other way around. You get the devil's attention. Now you're a threat. Now you're leaving. Now you're breaking through from that frequency that devil, that demon, that karma, that energy was feeding on. And it uses up the last reserves of its energy, of its control over you. Whether in fear, whether in stress, whether in hatred, whether in being alone, whether in loneliness, whether in being hated, whether in being shunned upon, whether in being left out, whether in being disgraced, whether in being embarrassed, whether in being humiliated. Regardless of whatever energy it has more control over you through, it uses that last reserve of control it has over you to intensify that kind of energy. Because right when it does that, right when that happens, what do you do? What do we do? We resort back. We relapse. We resort back to our old habits, to our old self, to our coping mechanisms. It knows the ego cannot tolerate it, and as such, it's going to resort to its old, familiar, friendly coping mechanisms. And what does those coping mechanisms lead to? It leads to recreating the cycle, recreating the pattern, reliving the pattern, rejecting, resisting the suffering, and as such prolonging it, delaying it for some point in the future, and simultaneously delaying, rejecting, the breakthrough, the overcoming, the shifting into the new frequency, into the new life, into your new earth, into your new self, into your higher self, into your godliness. And so, when you're about to shift, now that's one perspective to look at it. The devil's tries so harder and harder to get you before you completely shift. And you will notice it if you observe closely your life and the lives of those around you. Right when you start taking care of things, right when you struggled so hard to get your life back in flow and in a way that you like it, something happens, something pops out of nowhere, and you go like, really, after this long, after how much I struggled to get myself out of my old phase, out of my old habits, adopt new habits, become healthier, love life more, become more full of life, more eager to live, and starting my pursuit to my new self. Inwards, rather, not externally. Some habits externally as well, but more so inwards, innerly. This happens after all of this, and now this thing pops out of nowhere, and you take it with despite, you take it in bitterness, in vanity, in vain. And that causes you to indulge in more self-destructive habits and recreate the cycle. Now think about it. Why would the spirit of fear, why would that pure condensed energy of fear or despite or jealousy or envy be so caring about you, be so reliant on you, be so focused on you? Meaning, whenever you feel it that intensely, it is because that spirit of energy has control over you, and it's choosing to use it now, to utilize it now, to exploit it now. And when it does, that control it has over you, it's able through that control to use, to make you, to awaken those feelings within you. Whatever feeling you have given control to over you, you're the determinant at the end. In the beginning, you've determined that. In the beginning of that cycle, by whatever you done, that's a whole different topic. But why would it be so focused on you unless you're about to break free? Why would your karmic cycles be rushing so intensely to clear you out when nothing that amazing, that major, that fundamental is going to happen in your life? If you're not breaking through, if you're not shifting, if you're not moving over, overcoming, why is it that focused on you? Think about it. The only reason is because you are breaking through. You are moving away from it. But the purest form of reasoning when it comes to this is that you're not here for suffering. We're not here to suffer. You're just clearing out your karmic cycles because you cannot shift while holding that burden. You cannot move over. You cannot overcome that phase while you're burdened by all of those past experiences, by all of those past scars, by all of those past traumas. And now it's time to fully embrace yourselves, to fully allow yourself to experience those emotions, to experience those energies. Now is the time to not be in fear, to not be embarrassed, to not be ashamed of who you truly are, to not be controlled by your past, by whatever had hurt you in the past. Now is the time to let it all go. Now is the time to overcome your past, to become your new self, to become the newest version of yourself, to become a higher version of yourself. And to do that, You've got to embrace yourself. You've got to let go of the shame, of the fear, of your humiliation, of your embarrassment, of your fear of being judged, fear of being looking stupid, fear of being seen as, nonsensical. Now's the time to embrace it all, to embrace your true self at its fullest, to be yourself to its fullest extent, to be the most authentic version of yourself. And to be that, you've got to let yourself to feel whatever has arisen to the surface within you, whatever emotions came rushing in right before shifting. And if you cope, if you resort, and coping could be as simple as just, the moment you start feeling discomfort, you run, to your social media, to scroll over your social media or YouTube, or jump over Netflix, or call that friend, or just hang out aimlessly, mindlessly with that friend, just to avoid, to escape being with yourself, because you cannot tolerate it. This is not allowing yourself to feel all that you're meant to feel. This is resisting and rejecting the breakthrough, delaying the shift, delaying your shifting into your higher version. Regardless of the coping mechanism, it could even be as simple as going for a run or going for a walk. Because that too, yes, it could be at that as well. Although they are healthy, although there are new habits you're trying to adopt. Let yourself feel. Let yourself explore all realms, the whole spectrum of emotions, the whole spectrum of energy. Because only then you're able to shift. Only then you're able to rise higher. That's the whole point of ascension. Think about it. Whenever you want to be something, whenever you want to get promoted in your job, whenever you want to make more money in your business, whenever you want to be more loved by your partner, you shift. You become that thing before it. You prove yourself to get promoted. You work so hard and you market and you use all of your skills. You prove yourself in order to get that business running. You become more of yourself, you become more loving, you become more caring, you become more considerate in order to get more love. You become more of yourself. You stop lying, you stop fearing, you stop escaping in order to have a healthier relationship. And so when it's time to shift, you could think about it as the test, from God, or as your karma cycles, your karma is being cleared out of what's been burdening you, or the devil is trying to force you to relapse to your old habits. But there's always going to be that dark night of the soul, more often than not. But there are some cases in which you cannot, in which you're able to skip it. I mean, that requires you to be very special, to have very special traits. I mean, I experienced the dark night of the soul more than once, more than twice, 3 times, maybe 4, depends how you look at it. But each time, with each experience, I learned more and more about it. I became more able to maneuver through it. I became more able to break faster and easier through it, more fluently and with grace. But that's not always the case, sometimes the ego's constructs are so intense, and you've got to relapse and remind yourself, and relapse and remind yourself of who you truly are. But that's the case in general with suffering, with distress, with misery, with going through a crisis. With that being said, I hope that you are able to maneuver your way so fluently and with so much grace through your dark night of the soul, through your misery, through your tragedy, through suffering, and find all the love and all the grace and all the peace, all the bliss you so deeply wish for. Thank you so much for tuning in to another video by AF's Conscious Frequency. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. because that helps this video find its way to many more others who might actually need it.